Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Caravallo from ZK Research, and I'm joined today by Melody Brue for Moor Insights. Mel, you and I were together last week in Torrey Pines in San Diego. We're going to talk Avaya. But right now, you can see I'm in a hotel room. You're you look like you're in an airport based on your background.
I'm in an airport.
Yeah.
Yep. Control tower right there.
Yeah. So it's back on the road for us. So as I mentioned, we were both in at Avaya's Analyst event, which is, I think, the first analyst event they've done since well before the pandemic. And so while they've invited a few of us to GITEX and engage in events like that, this was their first dedicated event, event dedicated to analysts. And so what did you think of the event?
Yeah, I think that part, I feel like we have sort of a little bit more of an inside look. Like you said, we've been invited to other things, and they kept that in a pretty small group. And I think I appreciate that. There was a lot of change happening, clearly like coming through their transformation, both financially and operationally, and kind of keeping that sort of feedback and that purview into the company small makes sense. But I also feel like, we have the benefit of having seen a little bit more. So for some of the analysts that were there, there was probably a lot of really new information. Yeah. I think, for me, it was a really nice update. It was really nice to see the entire leadership team together, the way that everything was presented and the way that the team interacts together. Kind of the consistency of messaging and culture throughout that team was really impressive to me. And in general, it was a fantastic event. I feel like, you can't go wrong being at Torrey Pines, other than my bag being stolen.
Yeah, other than the hotel losing all your clothes. But we met with Avaya at GITEX last year, which was, in October. And even since then, Josh Mueller, their CMOs, I think, has come on board since then. ML Mako, the chief revenue officer, came on board since then. Soren, who runs technology, came on board since then. So even since then, they've had a pretty big uptick in management team. And frankly, in the 25 years I've been covering Avaya, I think this is the strongest management team the company's ever had. And it's top to bottom, they're all aligned correctly. There doesn't seem to be any one manager that tends to be a little rogue or trying to do things that the company's not. In fact, the only real holdovers from the Jim Chirico area are Nadal and Dave Austin. And Nadal is widely renowned as being a great customer advocate, and so it's good that he's still there. But I think they're trying to bring some of that into the current management team. But it was great. It's a very impressive list of managers, and you and I were talking a little bit about this before, that you can tell a lot about a company by the management team it has. And so your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I think I think most of those people, at least Josh Mueller, had started, I think, just right before then, and so we didn't really get a feel for what his strategy was going to be. What was he was kind of still in that kind of getting to know the company and the players at that point. But one thing that I do think is notable is that a lot of them have worked together in the past. And there is something, and either they've worked together in the past or they've been through a pretty significant restructuring at another company. And clearly that's important when you're going through this type of restructuring, having been through it, they're kind of battle tested, I think, in terms of both their capabilities, but also as a team. And so it was really good to hear, I think, especially from Josh, from Soren, from ML, on their strategy, because I think we've heard the overarching strategy from Alan Mazurek, and clearly that's, he's going to kind of push that through the organization. But to hear kind of in their own words and in their own sort of business units that how they're operating. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and I believe it was Soren who said this, but it was say do. And that seems to be he's the one that said it, but it does seem to be kind of a theme throughout the executive team, which is if you say it, you do it.
Yeah.
And that means internally, that means the promises they make to us as analysts, if they take back feedback from us, they say they're going to make change. They say it, they do it. And sometimes they don't. And that was called out. It was like, hey, if we're behind on this roadmap, I think they said they're 6 out of 8 or 7 out of 8 quarters into this sort of change cycle. And so, yeah, things are going to come up. But in this say do culture, there's really an accountability that they hold themselves to, that if they say it, they're going to do it. But they're also very transparent with this. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, where as being now a private company, they're not held to the same disclosures and that a public company is, yet they still choose to share a lot of their financials, their roadmap, everything with their stakeholders. And so I think that there is like a really open kind of accountability and visibility into their business. And that all goes back into one of the main things they're doing, which is trying to build trust, rebuild trust.
And I like the fact that I think from a product perspective, and well, even just from sales and marketing and everything they're doing now, it's about focusing on the top end of their customer base, right? When you look at Avaya's customers, and this is, I think, something that's gone unappreciated by a lot of the stuff that gets written about Avaya, is that they really all their customers are a who's who of the business world. It's all the top airlines, top banks, governments,
top banks,
hospitals, schools, whatever. They all use Avaya. In fact, I would argue that on any given day, we probably use Avaya technology. We're just not aware of it when we call into contact centers. And Alan kind of admitted this, that in the past, the company tried to be all things to all people. They're going to serve the needs of the micro businesses and large enterprises and mid-sized companies. And they had kind of a mess on their hands as far as product goes. And I understand why that is. When they spun out of AT&T as Lucent and then off from Lucent, they did have, a massive number of customers up and down the spectrum, but that's gone away. And so the way they go to market and the way they build products has to change. And so, they did share the fact that the majority of their revenue, does come from the top end of the customer base, and they're going to focus on it. And I think that's the right thing to do, and stop chasing, an industry. And frankly, their product set aligns with that too, right? They largely deal with on-prem and private cloud, and a lot of those mid-market, small market customers have already made their choice with both UCaaS and CCaaS, and so it would be hard for Avaya to catch up there. But they can certainly maintain a lot of those large customers by focusing their efforts on that top tier customer base.
Yeah, I mean, my only thought about that is like, there are businesses that are in sort of that sort of mid enterprise level that clearly are growing. So they do need to be able to serve not just the massive enterprises, but kind of make sure that there's room for those kind of growing companies, because there are a lot of them. But I do like the way that they've sort of modeled their ideal customer, and they've said, and they're building towards that. So it's not just go after everybody, try to get everything. It's like, here's our ideal customer, here's what they need, here's what we're building for. I mean, at least that was kind of my takeaway. Do you have the same kind of feeling on that?
Yeah, I think so. In fact, in the segments where they don't have a strong a product set for that audience, they are partnering, right? So they don't have a true UCaaS product, so they partner with RingCentral. They, even in the large enterprise base on the CC side, they or on the UC side, they're partnered with Zoom, right? So I think in the areas where they don't have a core capability from a product perspective to serve that audience, they have chosen to partner, which I think does get them a short-term win. It'll be curious to see what they do long-term, but I think in a lot of ways that that's the right thing for them to do right now. So
I mean, it gives them more entry points. It also allows them to sort of deliver on their promise of choose your journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too. In fact, the innovation without disruption tagline or hashtag or whatever you want to call it, I think actually is more than that now. When they first started using it at the end of last year, you in the social media era, everyone's trying to come up with their latest bug phrase,
Something.
right?
Yeah,
But it actually is more than that, right?
it
I
is.
think a lot of those large customers at Enterprise Connect, I did a roundtable with a bunch of the large enterprises, and all of them want to move forward, in this digital era with more AI and things, but none of them really want to disrupt operations. And if you think of, who their clients are, right, it would be any kind of disruption in the business is really bad, right?
Yeah,
And so their ability to allow customers to continue to use the tried and true Avaya technology, but then bring in over the top, the Avaya cloud, or in the case of UC Zoom or,
right.
Microsoft Teams, I think does allow for customers to use the latest and greatest innovation without disrupting what they're doing. And so I think, choose your journey and innovation without disruption actually are not just kind of the taglines you're going with, but the way they're thinking about building products and the way they go to market.
Right, the way that they're approaching
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I saw from when we were at GITEX to now, and saw this at Enterprise Connect as well, was there's just a much stronger focus on CX, where and it's not just the what's the end result, it's how do we get there, right? I think this came up at GITEX. It's like, how much is the agent experience involved in that? How much it's does how much do you have to worry about what's happening, in terms of sentiment analysis and burnout and all of that? And they seem to have come a really long way from even back then, from October, in how they're thinking about that, how they're prioritizing that, the kind of the agent health, the what happens in that first interaction with an agent can really affect the outcome for the customer. And so that really kind of more strong focus on being like, I mean, I think that was one of their key takeaways, hoping we came away from, is like, uber focused on CX.
Yeah.
But I see it more operationalized now than I did even 6 months ago.
Yeah, and I think part of that is just the reality of the market, right? The UC industry has really coalesced around two vendors, and that's Zoom and Microsoft Teams. They're trying to work with them, to provide calling for those two products. But realistically, although I think Spaces is a good product, the amount of work they would have to do to try and make a dent in that market, it would be so great that, I mean, I'm not sure it would ever pay off either. So, but where their core capability is contact center, it is CX, and they focus there now. With that being said, and I know you got to go catch your flight soon, I do want to talk about where the company goes next, right? So they've got the strategy down, right? They got the right management team down, but it seems now there is just a lot of work to do. I think even, ML talked about this in her talk track, that even the way they manage their partners, right? In the Nadal's region, they tended to work with the partners, where in the North American region, they tended to stand behind them. And so they didn't have a lot of visibility into the customers that they have. And so I think in fact, I think how the company rebounds in the US market is, in fact, I think falls largely on her shoulders, right? From a partnership and, being the chief revenue officer. I think a lot, the salespeople they bring in, how they go to market, how they manage their partners, all of that has to be revamped. And, for her, I think the job is just getting going.
Yeah, I think that how they manage their partners and how much visibility they have to their partners, where that's not being managed, like you said, they're not standing behind a partner, or actually how much visibility they have to their customer. So it's not that they're just, standing behind the partner, but that they are visible, that they're having interactions, that they're having, kind of, they're not just leaving it up to the partner to manage it completely, which I think that's the difference between, how Nadal's group operates, because they're very customer facing, even when there's a partner involved. And I think, the other thing which we've talked about is they are working really hard to rebuild trust within their customer base, with their partnerships. With new partnerships, it's so great to see Eric Yuan come on and kind of say hello to the analysts, and there's some borrowed credibility right there, right? That helps rebuild trust. But where I think that they have some work to do going forward is rebuilding trust within the industry. And this isn't necessarily just to their potential customers or analysts. This is just a general reputational management kind of thing. They're kind of known for like the company who's had to restructure twice, or, it's like, let's get past that. Let's show where they are now. And there's some work to do to get there. I mean, I think you said a lot of the other stuff falls on ML's shoulders. A lot of that falls on Josh's shoulders.
Yeah.
But, I do think that at some point the industry stops talking when they have nothing to talk about, and
yeah, that's
so.
Yeah. And I do think the trust you're bringing up is an important point. And realistically, I think they're going to hang on to a lot of their large customers, because I think a lot of them, unwinding Avaya is very difficult. The question is, how do they then get themselves in a position where they can start, going after new logos? And I think that does, to your point, require a lot of trust and belief that they're not going to go, down the same financial path they have in the past and have to go through another financial transaction. And they're not going to see another wave of new leaders come in. Like when you think under the previous CEO, how many heads of product and sales leaders and things like that they had. If I'm a customer, I'd have a hard time believing that whatever they're saying is going to be around in 6 months, because the entire leadership teams, got swapped out.
Right.
And so now stability, and I think the say-do that you brought up is important. And that's not just in Soren's team, that's got to be across the company. If ML or Alan say they're going to do something, they got to do them, and that'll help establish that trust and make Avaya more appealing to a lot more companies.
Yeah, and I do think that that's very culturally driven. And I've said before, I think that Alan is culture obsessed, which is a great thing. They do seem to really jive as a team. And if they hold each other accountable in that way, they hold themselves accountable in that way. And that, I think that say-do and showing that it at some point, no matter what their competitors say about them, it at that point, they kind of just look dumb for being, crap talkers.
Yeah.
Watch my because they've, they've said it and they've done it. Let's see, we'll see if they can do it. Yeah. But I came away from it feeling like they have, like you said, like they have work to do, but I think they're in a good position to execute on, and they've shown over the last, I don't know if it was 6 or 7 of the 8 quarters, that they can, right? So it's just a matter of keeping that momentum, keeping that kind of drive and that say-do culture, and being transparent and going through to, now let's get those additional logos, like you said.
Yeah, I think this is the most positive I've been on that company in a while. I think it's when Alan came in, he promised a lot of things, and while you want to believe him, and Alan's a very believable guy, you also have
done it before.
But you still have to look at it through kind of a skeptical eye, just because there were so many problems in that company, and he's almost had to tear it down to be able to bring it back up, right? And I think he's been willing to do that. And you also wonder, just from the investors of Avaya, right, the credit holders, would they have the patience to allow him to do that, or would they be just looking for sort of a quick payout, right? And it looks like the investors are in it for the long game, and and so I think overall, I think the company, I think we'd have to look at the Avaya Analyst Summit as a big success for us. One of the things I appreciate about Alan, he did this when he's at Vonage, is he's a CEO that actually sits in the sessions with us the entire event, and that's not common, right? You don't see that very in an analyst event. So
no, you're absolutely right. There's some that'll, they come in for some period of time, but they don't stay for dinner. They don't stay for, they don't sit down with you for breakfast. They, he was there the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's really nice because some of those conversations are the more important ones. The ones, of course, we get all the presentations, but sometimes when you just sit down in a small group or one-on-one, you really get to hear a little bit more and kind of get more of a sense of what that person is about. And maybe you get, some little nuggets here or there that you don't hear in a bigger presentation. So that is really important. And that kind of access is what we want as analysts, right? We want that access because it just gives us more to go on, right? So yeah, I agree with you and I appreciate that.
All right. So I know you got to catch your flight.
Yep, we've got flight attendants walking by.
So for the Avaya team, both of us, I think, thumbs up on the on the Avaya Analyst event. So it was good to see the company after all this time be able to lay out in a day and a half what they're thinking. Actually, almost 2 days. So, anyways, Mel, anything else you want to add?
No, I think we covered it all. Well, actually, where are you going next?
Well, I'm in Dallas right now at the Extreme Analyst event, and so I'm sure I'll see you again sometime at one of these events somewhere.
I'm sure it's going to be soon. Yeah, I'm on my way to Oracle, and but yeah, I'm sure we'll see each other very soon.
All right. So on behalf of Melody Brue from Moor Insights, I'm ZS Caraval from ZK Research. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on another ZKast. So thanks, Mel.